Hi, everybody. This is Hondo Carpenter, editor and publisher of Sports Illustrated's Fan Nation Las Vegas Raiders Insider. I'm also, of course, the beat writer covering the team, joined by my good buddy Matt Hladek, the editor and publisher of thespun.com. This week, we're digging in on the Raiders quarterback situation some more. We're going to start with Lamar Jackson. And Lamar is Lamar is now out there. A lot of people talking about he's 26 years old. He wants to get over 230 million guaranteed, which is what Deshaun Watson got. A bunch of NFL teams came out and said he's not for us, not the Raiders, but a bunch of NFL teams. And Matt, let's dig right into it. I don't think it's collusion. And I'm going to tell you why, because I know there's a lot of people screaming collusion. I don't think it's collusion, and here's why. A lot of NFL teams were angry at Jimmy Haslam for giving Deshaun Watson $230 million guaranteed. Now, I've talked to a bunch of people. It's not an issue of race, because I've talked to some executives who are of color, but they're all like, listen, given a quarterback who, especially one who is mobile, that kind of guaranteed money is crazy with the beating that they take. I talked to one executive of color who goes, listen, Lamar Jackson is clearly, in our opinion, a better quarterback than Deshaun Watson, but he's been injured multiple times. And yes, he's young at 26, but he's been injured multiple times. And you just can't afford to give somebody $48 million a year guaranteed for 5 years. And it cripples you with one more injury. I don't think it's collusion based on what I'm hearing from executives of color. And I don't think it's collusion based on money or collusion based upon color. I just think it's an issue of Haslam gave dumb money. And the old Michigan State national championship winning coach, Judd Heathcote, once said to me, it only takes one to love you. So maybe a team comes out and loves him, but the kind of money he wants, which is roughly 48 million guaranteed a year, they don't think he's going to get it. What are your thoughts?
I agree with the Deshaun Watson thing totally. I think that contract has sent shockwaves and really made a ripple around the league in terms of quarterback deals because they gave the most guaranteed money, 230 million guaranteed, to a guy who didn't play the year before, had 2 dozen open sexual assault cases on his record. Sure, when he
Yeah.
did play last, he was very good, no doubt about that. But that was a move that, to quote Juju Smith-Schuster, the Browns is the Browns, and that was a very Browns move. They were going for desperation. They had taken a step back after a nice 11-5 season in 2020, so they just took a gigantic swing, and I think it's affecting the rest of the quarterback market. And it's going to continue to do so because as these other QBs come up for new deals, guys like Josh Allen, and if Mahomes wants to restructure or things like that, they're going to look at that
Justin
contract.
Herbert.
Just
Yeah.
yes, exactly. And I
Yeah.
can't blame Lamar for saying, "Listen, I want an MVP here. You drafted me. Yes, I had some injuries, whatever, but I haven't had these type of off-field issues as Deshaun Watson. I've been a better player on the field. Why, if I'm your guy, why can't you give me what this team is giving him?" So I can't blame him for asking, but that doesn't mean he's going to get it. And I do
Great.
think that the rest of the NFL is wary of quarterbacks getting that type of deal because it will start just a massive uh, chain reaction, an avalanche of other quarterbacks asking for it. So I don't necessarily know if it's out and out collusion, but I do understand why all these teams are saying no or are hesitant because I think they're afraid of where this might go.
Yeah. The thing, Matt, that really hit me is when I was talking to several executives, but they're like, listen, nobody doubts he's a great player. Because I'm like, wait a minute. Derek Carr gets high 30s, 38, 39 million, 40 million. Daniel Jones gets 40 million. You're telling me he's not worth it. And everyone said, oh, he's worth it. But he's not worth it for 5 years, 50 million, 5 years, 48 million, all guaranteed. It's the length and obviously the amount of money that's guaranteed. It's going to be fascinating to me. Now, he can go sign an offer sheet from a team. And then it allows the Ravens the right of first refusal to say, no, we're not willing to pay it. That team's got to give us 2 first-round draft picks. But I had an executive tell me something last night I want to talk to you about. And let me grab my notebook, my notepad, because I want to read it effectively. This is what they said. The Ravens offered him a very healthy deal. He turned it down. Somewhere around $180 million is what I heard. This is according to the executive. So what happens if he goes out and no one's willing to offer him more? What happens then? Does he go back to the Ravens? Will he sign an offer sheet or play under the franchise tag? There's a lot here. It isn't that Lamar's wrong. I don't think he understands the market. He doesn't have an agent whose job is to go out and tell him what the market is. It's fascinating to watch how this ends. I think the Ravens have handled it as best as they could. But at the end of the day, I don't know how it's going to be handled by Lamar. Not because he's stupid, but because he doesn't have an agent to help him. Pretty fascinating thought there. What do you think?
Yeah, and the agent point has been one that's been brought up a lot lately, from different media members, and I tend to agree because when you're talking about big business like this, you're talking about major contracts from
A
enterprises like
quarter of a
NFL
billion dollars.
franchises. Yeah, I mean, you have to be on your game. You have to have people representation that can make sure you're getting the best deal and make sure you're understanding every little bit of minutia in that contract. He doesn't have that, which hurts him. And I agree with the part about the Ravens handling this well because I think they have the leverage. Because at the end of the day, they either match it if he does sign an offer sheet, like you said, they match it and they get their franchise quarterback back at a price that they're comfortable paying, or they say, you know what, we don't want to do this. It's too much guaranteed money. It's too many years, whatever. And now they call the other team's bluff, and that other team has to give them 2 first-round picks so they could potentially use one of those first rounders to find their next quarterback, and they could kind of rebuild on the fly. So the Ravens, to me, have all the leverage here, and I think that's why people were surprised. Like you said, how many people are saying, Daniel Jones got 40 million or whatever he got. Geno Smith got 40 million. Derek Carr got 36, 37, whatever he got. And Jones especially was being mentioned because he got it on the same day that Lamar got tagged. But it's a totally different situation, and I think that that's what you're seeing is it's not that the Ravens necessarily don't want Lamar. It's just they want to make sure they're getting him at their price. And the easiest way to do that is to use this non-exclusive tag where the league basically sets the market for them.
He mentioned to me, well, not he, but another executive mentioned this to me. I want you to give me your thoughts. He said, absolutely would be in the market for Lamar, but I don't think he's being reasonable. That's why we just said no thanks. I could see him easily signing a deal, 4 years, 180 million, and having 135 million guaranteed the first 3 years. But I just think going longer than 3 with a quarterback at his position and history of injuries is just not wise. Again, then the question is, would he even sign it to go back to the Ravens and say, here's the question. All right, now let's get to the matter at hand. The Raiders. I've said on Twitter to several Raider fans, I think you got to kick the tires. He's a great player. He is a guy who's young. He's won an MVP, but you got to look back at the last several years, which have been unproductive. Not all of it his fault. Let's make that very clear. But when you look at all the injuries, I don't think the Raiders should have went for Aaron Rodgers. First of all, his price was too high. It would have crippled the cap. And second of all, the drama that comes with him, which is even more, that should have been first, is just not worth it. Lamar doesn't bring that drama. He's not a problem in the community. He's not a problem in the locker room. He's a hard worker. I think he's a great player. So I think, yeah, okay, the Raiders, I think you should kick the tires on that. If you're willing to pay a guy 40 million, do you go to him and say, listen, here's the deal. We'll give you a 5-year, $200 million deal. We'll guarantee 120 million or whatever. To me, I just think that number, that $50 million a year number of Aaron Rodgers is just stupid. It just cripples the team. Do the Raiders kick the tires? I think they should. But at the end of the day, I think they have to be cautious. And I think what we're seeing from Lamar, he wouldn't bite. But I think they have to kick the tires. Your thoughts?
I think whenever there's a quarterback of this magnitude, this talent level on the market, you have to at least look into it. It would be malpractice
Mhm.
to at least not consider it. The question for the Raiders is in terms of how fully guaranteeing how much can they afford to fully guarantee from a cash perspective. And
Mhm.
number two, the other thing is if you're giving up 2 first round picks for a quarterback, to me, I think you have to say our team is ready to win a Super Bowl with this
Correct.
quarterback. Do they believe they are ready to win a Super Bowl right away with Lamar Jackson, or within a year or two? Because you can't guarantee it next year, but do they feel he's the missing piece? And that goes for any team that's considering him because that's a really steep price to pay for a quarterback. There's only, I mean, going around the league, there's how many quarterbacks would you say without question you're giving up 2 first round picks for? Patrick Mahomes is one. Um,
Josh Allen,
I would say Josh Allen. I think
Joe Burrow,
I would say Burrow 3, and then after that, it's kind of like I,
Herbert.
Herbert maybe,
Okay, and
Aaron
I would throw Trevor Lawrence in there because I'm a
Trevor
big Trevor Lawrence.
Lawrence, and I think in a vacuum as a player, you would give up 2 first round picks if you're a contending team for Aaron Rodgers, but not with everything around him. If you're getting the player that's Aaron Rodgers, he might be worth it at this point still, but not with the money and the drama and all the other stuff. So it's a slim number of guys that are worth that. So that's what the Raiders or anybody else has to consider.
All right. So again, I kick the tires, but here's the deal. There's one team that I think makes a lot of sense if you think you're a quarterback away, that you go get Lamar. And every executive I talked to said, if I'm the Jets,
Mhm.
this is stupid to consider Aaron Rodgers as young as you are. You go do whatever you can do to protect yourself, but go get Lamar. And I think to me that's the big one right there, the Jets. All right, I want to talk about Jimmy Garoppolo. Now, I think Jimmy Garoppolo is a really good quarterback. So this is not anything to do with him as a player. Unlike Aaron Rodgers, he brings no baggage. He's going to be like Derek Carr. He's going to be there every day. His teammates are going to love him. Everyone's going to love him. The difference between him and Derek Carr, because they're basically the same player, is that Derek Carr is always available. He's not hurt. Jimmy is always hurt. I have written this publicly, and I want your sentiment. If I'm the Raiders and you go sign Jimmy Garoppolo and he doesn't get injured, I think it's a great signing. He knows your system. He's already comfortable with the coach, all of that. But it is such a risk with his history of injuries that if you let Derek Carr go and you go get Jimmy Garoppolo and he's injured yet again, this is all on the Raiders administration for making a bad signing. To me, this is a all win, all lose. There's no middle ground with Jimmy Garoppolo. And again, I want to make it clear, this isn't like Aaron Rodgers where I've talked to enough players, people that have coached him, played with him, and in the administration that you don't want that dude. He is not good for your franchise. That's not the issue. But it is, the best ability is availability. Your thoughts on Jimmy Garoppolo?
I think that in terms of what you're saying, his skill set, I agree. I think he would bring a lot to the table to the Raiders if he's on the field. But the injuries are a major concern. This is I think I'm not I don't have it in front of me to be guarantee it, but I want to say he's only made it through a full season twice in his career. He made it through the year they went to the Super Bowl, the Niners, and I think he made it through the year they lost the NFC Championship to the Rams. So they've had success when he played. The problem is he doesn't always play. And you know, if you go where I could see the signing making sense for the Raiders, if the Raiders say, "Look, we'll bring in Jimmy, and we're going to draft a guy like we talked about Hendon Hooker last week, someone like that, where we think that he could be a future franchise guy, but he's not ready to start from day one. And
Mm-hmm.
Jimmy can, be that guy, almost like you're recreating the Niner situation in Vegas. Um, the issue with that is if Jimmy gets hurt, do you have Jarrett Stidham behind him, or do you go into a rookie? And at that point, your season's kind of over if you're going to an unproven rookie. Um, the other issue is does Jimmy want that arrangement now? I don't know if he wants to be the caretaker QB to another rookie. I think he might go somewhere where he knows he's not necessarily a long-term guy, but he wants to go somewhere where he will be the starter unquestioned for a year or two. So that's the thing. There's a lot of things to weigh with the Raiders. I don't necessarily know if Garoppolo is the right fit there. I don't think it would be a disaster signing, but it's not really something that I would be jumping over tables to do if I'm Vegas.
You and I have talked about this, but I've had NFL executives reiterated to me clearly Jarrett Stidham isn't their guy. And I wrote earlier in the year that if Jarrett's the starter next year, I wrote this right after the season, they're going to be disappointed. And they will be. I stand by that. I'm not guessing. Clearly, I was, intimated that to me. That was intimated to me.
Mhm.
But you don't re-sign Jarrett to a long-term deal when you get him. You don't play him all year when Derek has a couple plays where he's off. Then he plays, and after the season, Josh is almost did Bill Belichick not wanting to answer, and he's still there, and they can sign their own guys. So, I think there's going to be a market for Houston. Is going to be interested in him. I think there's going to be some other teams. So clearly that's not their guy. Doesn't mean they're not going to end up with him. They may have to overpay to get him, but it's the case. And again, I think Jimmy, if he didn't have an injury history, to me, he's the no-brainer. You go get
Mhm.
him. With all that injury history, and you're the Raiders, to me, it's a big risk. And if they get him and he gets hurt and the season's over, it's something that I'm going to write. You knew what you were getting. It's like Jerry Tillery. I
Mhm.
like Jerry Tillery a lot. Okay, good guy. He has a history in his career of making some questionable decisions. I'm not talking about just maybe some. So what's he do? He comes here to the Raiders and plays really well, like he has everywhere else. But he smacks the football out of somebody's hand and gets a opinion. I mean, gets a penalty because he wasn't thinking a questionable decision. Well, I said at the time, you knew what you were getting with Jerry Tillery, and I think you have to remember you know what you're going to get with a Jimmy Garoppolo. So the Stidham thing, do you overpay or go get a rookie? I mean, do you? I don't like this idea, and I certainly am not saying this is what they're thinking. Odds makers are saying he's got good odds, but I don't think that's what they're thinking in the building. What about a Carson Wentz, which I don't think's the answer. Don't hear that. They've put themselves in a unique position because basically all we know is they didn't want Derek Carr. We did know they wanted Tom Brady, didn't get him. But your thoughts on where you think the Raiders are at right now?
They're at a little bit of a crossroads, like you've kind of been saying. Their number one option was Brady. Um, Obviously, they're not going to get him. Then they didn't want to pursue Aaron Rodgers for, I understood why. Now it's kind of like, all right, well, now what do you do? Because you let your good quarterback go. Who can you find that's in a similar vein of Derek Carr? So at least you're not taking a step back. And now that they're at a little bit of a tough point, unless they could pull off some type of trade that no one sees coming or something like that. We talked about Mac Jones, who I don't think is on the trading block, but something like a trade of that kind of variety. Um, it's a tough situation because I think, and I've seen you say this to some fans on Twitter, if they are drafting a rookie and they're playing a rookie with Stidham or with somebody else in 2023, that changes the whole trajectory of what next season is going to be about and what ownership thinks of Dave Ziegler and Josh McDaniels, because that tells you that they're going to be more patient and they are building towards 2024 and beyond. So the Raiders are a little bit of a crossroads. They want to still compete in 2023, meaning go after a guy like Garoppolo, even if there's an injury risk, or do they want to not punt on 2023, but say 2024 and beyond is really where we're looking? I think that's the point they're at, the decision they got to make in the next few weeks.
So let me ask you, Makia Stanford is a pocket guy. He reminds a lot of people of Mac Jones. Um, Not exactly. I just said there are things about his game that remind you of Mac Jones. And, Hendon Hooker is a guy I know they really, really like. But here's an interesting thought. To move up to number one for the Raiders, which is to get any quarterback that they want. And I'm going to tell you, I do not think they're not in love with all four of what's considered the top four. Okay. They're not in love with all four. But to move up to number one, where you know you're going to get your guy, is going to cost you 3 first rounders, a couple of seconds, and a third. It's not worth the cost.
You
If
got to
you're one
know.
quarterback away,
Yeah.
if you're the Jets, maybe, but it doesn't help the Raiders. I have said I don't see a scenario where the Raiders move anywhere closer than 5. I believe, based on what I'm hearing from NFL people, that probably all 4 quarterbacks will, what's considered the top 4, won't be there at 5. And if they are, then you're not going to see probably the one the Raiders like. Now, a lot of people are asking me, why aren't you talking about the one the Raiders like? Number one, because I think it may surprise some people, not all, but some. And number two, I'm not going to do anything to give the Raiders, which is the team I cover, give their opponents a competitive advantage. So if you know that guy's not going to be there, in my mocks, I have the Raiders moving back. Because if they're not there and you can move back, you do it. Here is the question that I have for you. I don't think the Raiders are a team that's in a spot where they're one player away. So if they got to move closer than 5, I don't think they do. What do you think between Hendon Hooker and McKee at Stanford? Because they're 2 different quarterbacks.
They are. They are different. I'll tell you what, I saw Tanner McKee live this year against Notre Dame. They pulled off that upset there, and he really impressed me. I thought that he looked like a
Me too.
guy that I did not expect him going into this season to be the guy who was really on NFL radars, but the way he looked that night and from what I've been reading since, I think he's going to surprise some people. I think that Hooker has more upside, I think, than McKee. The issue with Hooker is the age. Are you worried about it? It is a little older, and coming off an injury. So, and then we also touched last week. Not that Stanford ran, this high-powered offense because they didn't, but Tennessee, you concerns of okay, how quickly can he adapt to a pro style offense because they were really quarterback friendly.
Yep, it's going to be fascinating times. So I think
I would
you and I are
swing.
both in the. Sorry,
I'm just real quick. I would swing bigger there if I'm going in for a 3rd-round QB. I would go for the upside with Hooker. That's what I would do if I'm the Raiders. But I do understand.
said
Realize
3rd round, but I think you meant late 1st round, right?
well, if he's rising up boards and they trade back, then yeah, it would be late 1st round. Originally I was thinking he'd be a day 2 guy, but if you're pegging him there, then I can see that.
I got to tell you, so I haven't done my full mock yet. As you know, I do that just before the draft where I get all my executives to help me. But every executive I talk to, I'm asking them how many quarterbacks go in the 1st round. They think 6, Matt. 6. Now, they've said to me, because of the new structure, the salary cap structure, and you kind of know where guys are going to get, you can take those risks because if you miss, you can move on quicker. I'm sorry, I don't see that. Now, let me give you another one. The top 4 guys. I'm going to use a term that they use in the NFL a lot. It's called a dude.
Yeah.
And that's a guy that everything about him. He's a dude. There's no concerns. He's going to show up. He's an immediate impact player. Several of the executives have said to me, if you look traditionally, the same teams usually pick in the front of the draft, the top picks in the draft, and they'll take risks and they'll stretch for people. Every executive told me there isn't one quarterback in this draft that doesn't have warts. There isn't a Trevor Lawrence. There isn't a Peyton Manning. There's not an Andrew Luck. There's not one. And so I had several of them say, we don't have any of the quarterbacks ranked in that first few picks. But the position of quarterback is so vital. And with now the ease of ability to move on from it, teams are going to take some risks. What do you think of that analysis? I thought that was really good analysis that none of them have a guy that they think is a dude.
I think that that's goes in line with what I've been seeing and is that and hearing is that there's different people have different opinions on which quarterback will go one overall, who will go next. The only thing you're pretty much guaranteed you can lock in is that the top four quarterbacks are all going to be first round picks drafted high. I think we know that's going to happen. There's always talk every year of an extra quarterback or two sneaking into the first round beyond the core group. Sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't. I'm assuming if you're hearing six, I'm guessing the other two names that you're hearing mostly are Hooker and Tanner McKee as a 5 and 6. It's just tough for me to see six going in the first round.
Understand? I'm in agreement. I'm in
Yeah,
agreement with you. This isn't what. Listen, I'm going to be honest. There is two quarterbacks maybe in this draft that I think are first round. I don't think any of them are high first round, but again, because of the salary structure now and the ability to move on and the importance of the position, people are going to move in. Now, next Monday, I was talking to a couple of executives and I've heard some new scenarios, and I'm going to drop a new number one Raider pick that I'm hearing. And it's going to be fascinating and interesting the way that works out. But at the end of the day, to me, this is such a crapshoot. And if you're the Raiders and you use that number one pick on a quarterback, and you're Josh McDaniels and you are Dave Ziegler, you can't miss.
no,
You can't. Now, I've written this, and it's made a lot of Raider Nation mad at me. I do think they're going to be back in 2024. I do think they are going to be. I've said if 2022 looks like 23, they won't. And I'm not talking about record. I'm just talking about instability, a lot of players moving in and out. But I think Mark Davis, I don't think it, I know it, is sold on the direction that they're taking the team. He wants that stability. But to me, the fascinating part is going to be what they do, because it's going to be an interesting few weeks leading up to the draft, isn't it?
it always is. You're getting into silly season, and especially after the league year officially opens next week. Um, it's always fun. This is when all the smoke screens come out and you hear some crazy rumors. It's almost as to me the drafts this lead up free agency in the draft is almost as fun as the actual season is.
I think it is as fun. All
Yeah.
right. He's Mac Haladic from thespun.com, editor and publisher. I'm Hondo Carpenter from Sports Illustrated's Fan Nation, Las Vegas Raiders insider coverage. Thank you for joining us on this week's podcast. Don't go anywhere, Matt. I want to talk to you. We'll see you all next week.